Hey everybody, Alex Kazora, SteelersDepot.com, back with some more Pittsburgh Steelers tape breakdown and analysis, coming off the Pittsburgh Steelers 22-17 loss to the Dallas Cowboys. All the talk seems to be revolving around George Pickens, his snap count, his effort, what's fact, what's fiction. Let's talk about it. Before we start, if you guys could like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the site, SteelersDepot.com. Would really appreciate that. I want to have a little bit of an extra intro here before we get into the tape, so apologize in advance. There's two issues and really two main topics of conversation with George Pickens coming off this game. A, his snap count, playing 34 snaps, a season low, playing 59% of the offensive snaps, also a season low. And when he was on the field, was the effort there. I'll put a link in the description below to an article I wrote for Steelers Depot on Tuesday morning, breaking down his snap count and the lack of snaps. And honestly, I'm not concerned about that. I'm not alarmed by that. It did not signal punishment for some reason to me. I break down that Pickens played all 32 of the 11 personnel snaps. He played a very small number of the heavy personnel snaps. That was more abnormal than other games, but if you look over the course of the season, he was only playing about half those snaps to begin with, and that number would ebb and flow through different games. So it was a little on the more extreme side, but nothing that seemed all that out of the ordinary to me. So from a snap count perspective, I didn't view it as punishment. Now you could argue that he should be out there and he needs to play all the snaps because he's their best receiver. That's fair. But from the standpoint in the media argument of he was benched, he was in the doghouse, he didn't play, I just don't buy that. But that is all detailed in the description below. What we'll do here is talk about the effort and any potential lack of effort on the tape for the snaps he did play. And I want to go through a couple different examples and kind of talk through them. And there's going to be some, I think, subjectivity to this, but I'm just going to give you my thoughts. So this first example here, Pittsburgh's running this over route to Calvin Austin. Pickens, number one, backside 3x1. He's going to clear this out. Cowboys in cover two. We got flats. We got two deep. We got the middle hole defender. And Pickens is clearing out for what I think Field should have hit this over route. He throws to Jefferson on the other side, nearly picked. Could you want more effort from Pickens through this route? Yeah, I think you can argue that, but he is to clear out. It's too high. He knows the ball's unlikely to go to him. He's really just clearing and holding the safety as Austin works by. And you even see Van Jefferson, and he's running harder, I would say, than Pickens. But he even kind of slows up here at the end, thinking he's not getting the ball until Fields throws it. So, there's going to be a long discussion, and I'll try to mix it in throughout the video of when you're the primary guy versus the secondary read, or kind of knowing you're not core of the progression and the concept. Will you pull up? Will guys not run as hard? We'll talk about all that. But I just kind of want to go through the first play, get a lay of the land. We're watching Pickens. Could he run that harder? Sure. But he is clearing out this route for Austin underneath. On the over route, I think Fields should have thrown that, but that's a different discussion. So that's the first example to look at. This one, you could ask for more. I get probably what's going through Pickens' head on that play. This was an interesting call. 3rd and 24. I'll pull up the down and distance for you guys to see. And you think, draw here, run a screen, something simple. In Pittsburgh, they take a shot, or at least they're trying to take a shot. You're going to see this sprint out to the right from Justin Fields. And this play, I'll run it through, is actually the Atlanta play that they ran at the end of the first half against the Falcons, where Fields hit Pickens for a 30-plus yard gain, the one where he stepped out of bounds but tried to keep running, and time almost ran out, but he got saved by stepping out of bounds. And so we're watching Pickens to the top here, getting 3x1, Pickens the X, the backside receiver, and some of this is kind of maybe a decoy where you're kind of pretending like the ball's not going to come to you, and then you break back out. From Pickens to be kind of lull these guys into a false sense of security. But we're watching Pickens here. We see Fields peek back at Pickens here. It's not really there. He just chucks it out of bounds, and Pittsburgh punts. So my first thought watching this play live was 3rd and 24. They're taking a shot here. What's the read? But it was actually the Falcons play. I want to pull up the Falcons play now. We can kind of compare. I always think comparisons to other examples are really good ways to judge tape. When you look at a play, let's say a play goes wrong, try to find another example of it going right, be able to compare and contrast. Those things, I think, provide the clearest visuals to what ideal and what better plays look like compared to other ones. So let's pull up the Falcons play. All right, Falcons game, end of the half, other side here, just formation flipped. Pickens to the bottom, and we're seeing the same from him. Now, you be the judge. Did he run this one harder in the Falcons game or in the Cowboys game? I would probably say I think he ran this a little bit harder, especially when he broke back out here to really kind of create some separation. He stems inside, tries to hold Bates, fool him like he's going to run, a post or something to the middle of the field, and then break back out. Fields hits him. It's a big gain. Great job overall. I'd say the initial release is about the same in terms of the release. I think Pickens may be digging a little bit harder here. I would say the break point, comparatively, he ran this route a little harder against Atlanta than he did against Dallas. But if I have the tools, and I don't know if I'll be able to, I'll try to split screen this. I'm probably getting myself into editing trouble here, but we already showed the example. I'll go back to the Dallas game at the very least. So we're watching the releases and the routes from George Pickens on the same concept. One last look at the Cowboys game. Again, formation flip just because of the hash and what side of the ball was on the left hash this time. So watching Pickens with the release, is that as hard? Yeah, I think watching it back, I hadn't watched the Atlanta one before I actually showed you guys. I just knew that was the play. I would say that Pickens ran the Falcons one harder, but it's not like that release was super, super different. There was kind of a slow playing of the concept there, and it's going to take some time for Fields to boot out and then throw back, so you don't want to maybe break too early. Not looking to make excuses for him. Like I said, I think he ran it harder against Atlanta than he did Dallas, but again, we're just comparing and contrasting. A little later in the game, Pittsburgh 3-1 again, although Pickens number 2 this time, so he's to the strength of the formation. And this to me is a good route. And I think what it boiled down to, I'll kind of give my conclusion away, is that whenever he was more part of the core progression, he ran his routes harder. When he kind of knew the ball was not, in all likelihood, going to go to him, or at least not designed for him, the effort, it was down. I mean, he was loafing, certainly. We'll see some of those examples here in a second. So that's kind of my interpretation. Again, I'll talk about some conclusions more, but it's a good release. It's a good route. He gets held here, ends up being this jump ball. Even if he somehow came down with that, it's not going to be in bounds. Not criticizing the catch point and the finish, but I think the effort here is fine, and just want to start showing some other examples whenever I think he was more part of the progression. Want to show these two examples, the same exact play call. This is the lone attempt from Kyle Allen when Justin Fields had to get checked out in concussion protocol as mandated by the independent spotter. And it's a great throw here from Kyle Allen, 3-1, Frymouth backside. Get some motion here from out of 2-2 from Jefferson. Pickens number 2 to the top. And I like the route here. It's kind of like a snag concept. They're running a little snag route underneath. We got a fast 4 by Najee Harris to the flat. We got Pickens on the corner. Some traffic, a little bump and run there. But I honestly really had no issue with the actual release here from George Pickens. I also want to say, Pickens, there's some of these longer, bigger dudes are a little bit more of a longer stride. And sometimes they don't always look like they're moving as fast as they are. And we're going to see examples of Pickens certainly not running anything close to top speed. But I do think that is an element. Sometimes those guys that are built like Pickens may not be looking like they're running as fast as, say, a Calvin Austin, who's kind of obviously a shorter guy and just kind of more feisty, and so it looks a little bit different on tape. So I have no issue really with the route on this play from George Pickens. Now I show that play to show this one. This is the immediate play after. Fields jump back in. And it is the exact same concept. Kind of crazy to run the exact same play, almost like playing Madden and going to hurry up, even though that wasn't the case here. Fields came back in, but literally the same thing. Same motion from Jefferson from 2-2 to 3-1. Same concept. Najee goes out. I mean, it is like, just run it again. And, Fields hits Jefferson, and it's a good play by both quarterbacks. We can debate about the release here from Pickens. I thought a little bit slower tempo on this play, and so we're just going to run this one through. I thought here, a little bit slower, needs to probably be digging harder. You do wonder, and again, I'm just talking out loud. People can disagree reasonably. Do you change tempo? Is Pickens slowing down here to be a little faster at the break point? At the break point, I think it is good. Is he trying to kind of slow play the DB here to kind of act like ball's not going to come to me, and I'm going to slow this thing down, and then right here, ramp things up at the top of his route? You could argue that. You could say that's an excuse. I'm just, again, kind of thinking and talking out loud. effort can be one of those things where it's hard to know sometimes. It's a pretty weighty claim to say a guy's not showing effort, and so you want to have really good evidence because you never know what's going on in a guy's head and what a situation is, all those kinds of things. So we're just talking through it right now, but I show those two plays, same concepts. I think Pickens a little less tempo on the second one. This play is really interesting, and I think it kind of speaks to my overall takeaway that when Pickens knew, just from the design of the play to the coverage, the ball wasn't going to him, or at least, again, not intended to go to him, that you weren't getting the same effort as you were in situations where he felt like there was a better chance to get the football. So this is, you can call this different things. Vocabulary can be different. This is mesh, sit, rail. I'll show you an example here in a second, but we're getting mesh here. We're getting try move. He sets the mesh. Austin running underneath. That's your man beat if they're playing man. We got Van Jefferson behind on this sit route. So if they're playing zone, we're going to hit this. We got Najee on the wheel. They're playing cover one, man coverage. We can check there. And then we got Pickens backside. So Pickens is truthfully really not part of this progression unless you got a really good pre-snap look for something, too high kind of look where this thing might be wide open. That'd be about the only time you're going to hit this. We're looking at the mesh here initially. If it's man, we're going to probably hit one of these two guys. If it's zone, we're looking at the sit. If we like the matchup in man, we're also looking at the wheel from Najee Harris. And so I want to just run this one through. We're seeing Pickens not showing tremendous effort here, obviously, but I think what Pickens thought is, I am really not part of this progression. It's middle of the field closed. I'm running this more in-cut here. The ball's not going to come to me, so I'm not running at full speed. I'm not excusing that. I'm saying what's going through his head. This play, and actually showed this play in the preseason, I want to put on screen right now. Again, verbiage can change, but one name for it is Maestro. And so it's on screen right now. You guys can see it. And so that's the concept. And so I'm just going to call it Maestro from here on out. But I want to show the play I showed in the preseason. Again, I like comparing plays. I think plays in a vacuum, just watching one play sometimes can get you into trouble. So I want to show you Calvin Austin running this route compared to George Pickens. All right, so preseason against Houston, the preseason opener, and we're getting the same call. We're getting Maestro. We're going to get a mesh route where it's Connor Hayward is going to set the mesh, and Scotty Miller will run underneath. We got 82. That was Des Fitzpatrick. He's going to be on the sit route. We got the wheel route from the running back, Jonathan Ward, and we got Austin up top on this post or dig, probably some site adjustment based on coverage. Kyle Allen hits Scotty Miller. It's zone, hitting the mesh, just trying to get some yardage, but not going to work too well against zone. Don't care about that. What I care about is Calvin Austin at the top. This is where George Pickens was at. They're running the same route. We're watching Austin come off the line here, and you're certainly seeing more effort. You're seeing a guy, even though the ball really has no chance in the world to go to him, at least on the intended route, it would have to be a scramble drill or a really just bad decision by the quarterback. We're seeing Austin, he's firing off the ball more. He's more explosive at the break point, and so he's certainly running this route a lot harder than what George Pickens did. And so you can sit there and say, we got other guys like Calvin Austin, who ran this route, and he runs it hard each time, even though the ball really has no chance to go to him. But showing the difference there, certainly fair to critique this one from Pickens. I think I know what was in his head at this point, but we're watching a difference of another guy run this route, certainly with more urgency than George Pickens. I would say this is the most egregious example of Pickens not showing effort. And again, I think I know what was in his head at this point. This is going to be a boot to the right. What was the down and distance on this play, too? I'm just going to check this with you guys live. This was 1st and 10. Okay, 1st and 10. So we're going to get Fields on a boot to the right. Hits Pat Fryermuth. Play really doesn't work. Doesn't really go anywhere. But that's the play. Backside, as you guys probably saw, George Pickens really barely moving on this play. Now he is, and this is what I referenced when I said I think I know what was in his head. He's backside, the ball going to him. He's not part of the progression. Basically only going to get the ball. Something kind of crazy were to happen. But at the same time, he's just not running the route. He's literally not. He's supposed to be on, I assume it's going to be one of these crossers. Pittsburgh runs this concept in different ways. Often where it's going to be Fryermuth in the flat, and they're going to get a corner route. They're going to get kind of a crossing route that's going to work back. That's kind of a secondary read. They ran this a bunch of times in this game, including on the missed pass to Hayward down the field. They kind of faked off of it where they ran the concept and threw it back on that Y leak to Hayward. It was a really good concept. But we're just watching Pickens jog this one out. And I mean, that gets called out, I think, in the receiver room. It should, under receivers coach Zach Azzani and OC Arthur Smith, and these guys preach effort and blocking and all that kind of stuff. And, because you never know what could happen. I mean, on this one, yeah, it's a boot out, and the ball's got to come out here probably pretty quick, but they've hit this crosser a ton. It's been available a lot. And so in this situation, obviously, the pressure's there pretty quickly, and so it's unlikely Pickens would have gotten the football even if he had run this one at full speed. But you never know what could happen with a mobile quarterback, a guy like Fields who can keep things alive. You don't know what kind of pressure he's going to have. Is this guy going to bite? Is he going to get blocked? Is he going to fall? I mean, whatever the case is. So really bad rep here. Certainly no excuse for it. I think the thought for Pickens was, this ball's not coming to me. I'm backside. It's going to be something in the flat here probably pretty quickly. And so I'm not going to show much effort. But that one, yeah, that's a bad rep. To further my point, we're going to watch Pickens 2x2 stack to the top here. And we're going to see Pickens run this route harder. This one, he's more part of the progression, potentially. He knows pre-snap, out of the huddle, there's a better chance I get the football here. And so he runs the route. We can talk about the nuance of the route. I think it's pretty fine at the break point. It doesn't create a ton of space. But point is, my overarching thought is that whenever he was part of the progression, he was running his routes fine. I really had no issue with them overall. When he wasn't, you saw the tempo come down. So just showing the example, the contrast between when he was part of the progression versus when he wasn't part of the progression. Last example, and then I'll wrap things up with some final thoughts. A debatable one here. We're going to watch Pickens again on a crosser, and it's kind of open to interpretation what the effort level was here. And this is the concept I just mentioned, where they run this. This is kind of a staple play for them. They dress it up in different ways. We're going to get a flat. It's going to be Jefferson. We're going to get something more corner route, something more downfield. In this case, it's Austin running away. Again, slight adjustments here depending on coverage, I'm sure. We're going to get a crosser by the backside player to become that more frontside option. Flat's not there. Fields looking for Pickens. Throw incomplete. Off the snap here. How much harder could he run that? You can certainly think he's capable of running it harder. What exactly is acceptable effort level or not? When you watch it here, I think he's not running it super, super hard. He does kind of gear down a little bit there. I think Fields wanted him to keep running through that to get away from leverage. And so I think this is one, I know this is one you can critique. It's not the most egregious example, but it's one where I think Pickens can be expected to run this route harder, because it is not the immediate read. They're going to read this one low to high. The flat's there, then we're going to hit it. But, your second part of the progression generally on this play, if the flat's not there, that crossing route that Pickens is running is the next read. And so I would like to see Pickens run this one out more. So this one is disappointing in the sense of, to me, he was more part of the progression, and I'm still not seeing great effort. Again, I do think some of these guys, the way that they run doesn't always maybe capture the speed in which they're running, and I don't have the next-gen stats to tell you the speed they were running and all that kind of stuff, but I would like to see Pickens dig through this one a little bit more, and maybe Miles Killebrew's face says it all. So my overall thoughts are, from a snap count perspective, I believe Tomlin, I really truly don't think it was a bench-related type thing, even if you say the effort's not great, and so he wasn't playing because of that. I think in practice they probably, leading up to this week, didn't have Pickens involved that much. They had other guys that were working. So I truly think it was part of the game plan. If you disagree, then we'll agree to disagree, but that's just my thought. I think the data supports it overall. Again, check the article in the description. From the effort standpoint, there were certainly some issues, and there were some plays where he is not running hard. I do think, again, overall, when he was more part of the progression, you saw more effort. When he wasn't, you saw him gear down. And he's not the first receiver to ever do that. There are certainly receivers who have talked about it before. Like, I know I'm not getting the football. My energy is going to be a bit lower. You can say that's wrong, and I hear you, and I really would tend to agree with you, but it is kind of a reality. I think two other thoughts here is that Pittsburgh does have to get him the ball and get him involved more early. Like it or not, receivers like him who have a diva streak and some maturity issues to work through. AB was the same way. You want to get these guys active and engaged early. I do think, and I'm not excusing this, but I'm explaining it. It's a tough game for Pickens. He's not getting involved. He kind of starts slowing down later in the game. I'm seeing more examples later in the game of his effort really falling in some situations where he was even part of the progression, like the play we just saw that's on screen right now. So I think if you get him more engaged early, you're going to reduce, him kind of getting frustrated and kind of taking himself out of the game in a sense where his effort level comes down. Should that have to be the case? No, you would love for the guy to be, Larry Fitzgerald or Hines Ward and just go hard all the time, whether he's catching one pass or he's catching 10 in a game, having the best game of his career, certainly. But we know there's a reality to this thing. And just in general, he's your best receiver. He still is. And so there's got to be a better effort to get him the football. I want to, see that improve. So that's a thought sort of in defense of George Pickens. One that is not in defense of him is if you're going to have that reduction in snaps to load manage and preserve you for the snaps you're out there so you can run them hard, okay, fair. But you got to run these routes hard. You can't have both. You can't have the snaps be reduced and also kind of take off some of the snaps where you're not part of the progression. Like it's got to be one or the other. If you're going to play 100% of the snaps, then maybe I could sit there and rationalize and say, well, to kind of preserve yourself, you're playing so much, you're doing everything. Some of the ones where you're not as involved, you're going to back things off a bit. There are even some coaches that kind of teach that. Probably more in the college game, that's more tempo, where there might be higher numbers of snaps. I remember Art Briles in Baylor. Their receivers were tough to scout sometimes. It would look like they're taking plays off. I remember with Corey Coleman, their first-round pick of Cleveland. You'd watch his tape at Baylor and say, man, he's taking that route off. And what they would teach is if you're not part of the progression, there are some times where you just kind of get to take the play off. Or on a run play, if you're backside, you're just kind of chilling, you're catching your breath. I'm not saying that's what Pittsburgh teaches, but I know that is kind of a thought for some teams, again, probably more in the college game with younger guys and more tempo and all that kind of stuff. But that does happen. Those are just realities of the NFL, and that's just whether you like it or not. That's just kind of how it is. But that's not the case here. You can't have 40% of the snaps where you're on the bench and then only run like half your snaps when you're on the field at full tempo, full energy. So my overall thoughts is, and I've said that a million times, I'm talking out loud with you guys. There is no script, and I'm just kind of working through it. And there's nuance and I think a good, healthy discussion to be had here. If you're just like, Pickens is terrible and he sucks and he's lazy, then get him out of here. Then that's your opinion and that's fine. I'm not really looking to engage on that kind of side of it all. I think I want to have an honest conversation about the tape, the snaps, everything that we're talking about here. So I do want to see more effort from Pickens. I want to see him run these things harder, especially if there is going to be some reduction in snaps in those heavy personnel packages. I do want to see Pittsburgh also get him the football early, scheme things up for him better just overall. They did not do a good job in this game. I think there's been other games as well where it's not been as effective. I think maybe the Chargers game, I want to say, where I had some issues in that one. So yeah, I think there's a couple different things to talk through. And I think if you get the ball to Pickens earlier and more often, you are going to keep him engaged. And I'll just repeat it. You can sit there and say that shouldn't have to be the case. You're a football player. Go out there and play, no matter what your role is. But we know with AB, even Ben would talk about it. I'm getting him the football early. If I don't get him the football early, he's going to start getting mad. He's going to be throwing Gatorade coolers. He's going to get out of sync. And he wouldn't really take plays off, but he would just get super, super frustrated. And you'd have some sideline blowups. And you guys know the story there. So that's just a reality of dealing with number one receivers and making them happy. And it's also good for your offense. I mean, this guy is obviously a guy that deserves a lot of targets in terms of his talent level, what he brings to the table, and all that kind of stuff. So I've talked a lot here. Those are my takeaways. If you're going to reduce snaps, show more effort. The snap counts, I believe, were not punishment. And I think Pickens, the plays that you saw him taking off generally were the stuff where he wasn't part of the progression. When he ran him harder. And I saw him wane at the end because I think he was getting frustrated and checking himself out of the game and slowing down because of that. So in a nutshell, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you. And those are kind of my final conclusions on George Pickens, his snap count, and his effort. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the site, SteelersDepot.com. Again, just want to share my thoughts here. I know it's a long video. I appreciate it. I know I don't always share my thoughts as concisely as I would like to, but I'm just kind of talking through it, all the nuance, sharing what's on my mind. I don't think these things are always black and white. I think there's some levels of gray to it that we can talk about, and at least kind of understand what is happening and why it is happening. So thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.